Hey guys, Nuie here, and so as I previously stated, the purpose of this video is basically just to show you how I've remodeled my a couple of my builds, not because they were terribly designed or anything like that, but because I found ways to tweak them to make them a little bit stronger and both offer a little bit more survivability while still keeping enough damage that they can still be viable for quite a while. So I'm going to basically going over this is going to be basically covering two of my builds. So the first one will be my Sunder build, which is typically one of my league starters, and then as well as my Glacial Cascade build, which is another one of my league starters. So I am here on I'm just gonna cover my my Sunder build first. So I'm on that character, and then I'll switch over to my Glacial Cascade character, and I'll show you the issues that I was having with that character and why I decided to make the changes that I did. So first and foremost, there's no changes. There's no because I didn't fully level out my Sunder build this patch because well, I'm going through the process of leveling it now, but what I basically did was I ran a actually, this is one thing I needed to refund here. What I did was I ran a Glacial Cascade, which for the first portion of my league this year, instead of doing a Sunder build for this patch, I decided to instead run a Glacial Cascade Witch. So my Glacial Cascade Witch needs to be fully redesigned, and I needed to take in a couple of things. Now, first off, the build was very strong in itself. So if you played it, it was very, very strong. It cleared pretty much anything. But the issue when it came down to it was that it had no ability to handle reflect maps, or even simple reflect mobs in and of themselves. Any type of reflect mob I ran into, I pretty much killed myself on, because the damage I did was so substantial that I was not able to sustain myself against it. So my redesign was based off of that and me wanting to be able to survive through that burst and stuff like that. So I took into account redesigning it along that path so that I'd be able to survive. Now, the simple redesign that I made in my Sunder build case, what I needed to redesign was I didn't feel like it had enough health. Now, typically for this build, I'll just level it up, and it was able to clear about up to T10s very comfortably. So what I changed on it was to be able to make it run longer. I gave it more evasion, more armor, took away some of its damage, and then gave it even more health. So the reasons I wanted to do this was, one, I wanted to be able to go a little bit farther, and two, I wanted to make it a more generic build so that I don't have to focus so much. This is one of my builds that I don't use any type of uniques when I have it set up mentally, because it doesn't need any uniques to make it excessively good. Now, throughout the league, I had picked up some nice uniques that are making it augment it pretty well, but when it comes down to it, my league starters don't really need a lot of uniques to be able to run effectively. So that's why I typically will do like a Sunder, and this is why I did a Glacial Cascade build, because they take so little to be able to make them strong. So heading into my skill tree, what I changed, or heading into path of building, I should say, what I did change was that I changed my skill tree. So here's how the end game skill tree now looks for me, which is quite a bit different than my former build, which didn't have maximum leech or anything like that. So this is what I've started scaling to now. So for my level 40 build, on my level 40 build, I've started running more types of a tree more like this. So I ended up starting out with quite a bit less damage than I initially had previously, but from what I've been experienced so far, my current character is level 53, so from what I've experienced, it's not too big of an issue. So this is what my current build kind of looks like and everything that's involved with it. And then my first ascendancy always went to Fortify, because when this build is so focused on Fortify, instead of running the Slayer tree, I ran Fortify so that I would be able to get a lot of tankiness, as well as still getting the increases of damage from those. So I want to focus on getting Fortify first still. Now previously this build did have about a nice 400% or so total increase to defenses. Now it's got somewhere around 600 total. So this is what the 40 tree looks like as far as me. And then what I've started going over to for my 70 tree is that I end up picking up more damage nodes, more life nodes. I take away abilities enemies to leech from me. I've grabbed extra resistances. I've ended up grabbing this entire evasion node tree and getting all the extra life and health from that. I also grabbed Valpact, which I formerly wasn't running in this build. So now I have Valpact, and I also grabbed 2 jewel sockets. So I have those as well, which helps my build quite a bit more. And then I also scaled up through here and grabbed plenty of health and stuff like that, which my build for. Excuse me. It's very hot here, so it's making me a little bit drowsy. But yeah, formerly I wasn't grabbing all of those extra health nodes or anything like that. So now I'm getting several amounts of evasion, a lot of health, a lot of damage. It's still taking in nice amounts of damage from both these trees, as well as the fortified damage, as well as here. So I'm still getting plenty of damage, as well as getting a nice amount of health and such like that. I'm also grabbing just scaling out into the more finishing out fortitude, so I can swap out fortify for just melee fizz or something like that. So then as I head into the more of the endgame tree, I still grab more stuff like this, more damage, stuff like that, and then to finish out the build I'll just grab the rest of the damage nodes from just cleaving and stuff like that, and then a little bit extra health. But here's how the tree fully spans out once again, so you get to see everything that I've redesigned as far as everything with this. So I have really nice leech, because I have permanent leech instant leech from Valpact, which I formerly wasn't running, and then I have 308% increased evasion, as well as 268% increased armor from the tree. So I have really high armor, really high evasion. I have decent res, especially to fire res. Lightning res is a little bit lacking, and chaos res is a little bit lacking, but you can always handle those with items without too much difficulty. I have a nice amount of damage still, and then I'm still running basically the same thing. So sunder, ancestral protector, molten shell for punishment, which curse on his increased duration, hatred, herald of ash, a flame golem, and leap slam just to get around. But then you don't need to run you don't need to run Fortify on Leap Slims or anything, because you'll have permanent Fortify, so you just be able to run Leap Slim with faster attacks, which reduces links that you need. So this is how my full build kind of works out, and there's plenty of things that you can work with as far as this build. There's plenty of physical damage, fire damage, cold damage, a little bit tweaked for everything like that. But there's plenty of unique items that are good for augmenting this. This build in particular doesn't particularly need many unique items to be able to clear comfortably, and this is why I decided to remodel this build a little bit to make it more endgame content worthy. So now I'm going to switch over both in-game. First off, I'm going to switch over in-game to my witch to kind of show you guys how that tree looks currently, and then I'll show you guys the remodel that I've done to it. So I'm going to click off of path of building here, and then I'm going to head over in-game. As you guys can see, I'm going to head over to my witch currently, and exit my character sling. So as you guys can see, my level 70 witch, I actually ended up stopped playing it basically. Not because I couldn't farm out the currency for it, because I just didn't need to, and I would have so many builds anyways, it wasn't really an issue for me to play a different class anyways, and then I just leveled up a different class. But so what it comes down to, where is it? Okay, open that. So, where is it? So what it ended up coming down to with this witch, because if you guys don't know, this is my elementalist. So it's a glacial cascade elemental list where I transfer all of my physical, instead of transferring all of my physical damage to cold damage, I originally had transferred all of the physical damage to fire damage, and then everything to fire damage. So here's how this original tree had been spanned out, and here's the mistake I made, which may not have been a huge mistake, but it was a mistake for me. So here's how the tree originally was planned out, and here's everything that I had covered. So I had a nice, decent amount of health, and then a nice energy shield pool, so everything was set up pretty comfortably. However, my issue when it came down to it was that I had, instead, when I ran my cruelty lab, which is the second lab you'll run, it's level 58, I believe, or 55, one of those. Instead of grabbing Pendulum Destruction, which gives you 100% increased elemental damage for 4 seconds, I should have grabbed Paragon of Calamity, which gives me the reduced reflective damage. That would have probably saved this build very comfortably, and probably would have made this build able to live quite a bit longer. But because I didn't do that, I ended up paying for it very well when it comes to reflect maps, because there's no real way to stay alive as far as reflect maps are concerned with this build. Because you don't really have a leech source or anything like that. You're not really taking anything like that into account. So what I ended up doing whenever I run into a reflect mob, I would just kill myself instantly, because your damage is so high on Glacial Cascade. As you can see, level 70, 23,000 damage just on my tooltip, and then it scales up to 27,000 just from everything involved with this build. So it was very, very difficult for me to stay alive with this build, well, because of the amount of damage. And as you can see, I was getting ready to set up my my 5 and 6 sockets, and I would have done even more damage, but I would not have been able to sustain myself with the amount of damage I did. This build also did not have capped reses. It only had capped cold res. I did not have capped fire res or capped lightning res. That was another issue that I needed to take care of. So what I ended up doing was going over and completely overhauling this build. It took me about two or 3 weeks to completely overhaul this build and get it to a place that I felt really, really comfortable with as far as everything involved. So what I've now done when I come over to this build in Path of Building is, once again, I'm still taking Paragon of Calamity and stuff like that. And then I'm taking Mastermind of Discord and still taking Legion of Immortal and stuff like that. But now I've created this build in terms of more of a completely cold damage based build. So it's still got a nice amount of damage. It's still got plenty of life. It's still got a decent amount of life and a decent amount of energy shield. So I get 235% increased energy shield from the tree, 60% increased life. So I still have decent defenses as far as everything like that. But now I'm also taking into 144% increased evasion from the tree. So once again, it is more over cold res capped. But I should be able to get more resistances, as I'm currently running moon ring resistance on here. As you can see, I could easily swap those out for a fire res and a lightning res ring, so I'll have plenty of resistance from that. So when I redesigned this build, I actually decided to scale it more towards heavy crit, and then I am scaling in with a 100% cold damage overall. So how I did that and how I accomplished that was by, first off, I am running a, this build is a little bit weird in terms of how I did this, but what I ended up doing is starting out in the witch tree and picking up plenty of energy shield, scaling through, grabbing all of my life nodes, all my health nodes, and all my physical damage nodes, because Glacial Cascade now works off of physical damage, and then 6% of that physical damages were converted over to 60% of your 50 physical damage converted to the cold damage. Now, taking into keeping in mind of what I did with my cold raider, my frozen raider, I took into the account of these nodes down here, which converts 40% of your physical damage to cold damage. So that'll give me the 100% cold damage overall. So I made sure to scale down here and be able to grab those. Then I scaled through and grabbed plenty of evasion, so I have a little bit more evasion for the build, as well as plenty of energy shield, as well as this Ash and Frost Storm, which I previously didn't have, which gives me more reduced reflected elemental damage I take. So I should have less ability to one-shot myself because of this node, as well as still running 50% reduced reflected physical damage, elemental damage from here, which is Parallel on a Calamity. And then if that doesn't do it, I'm also going to be running the who is it? Soul of Yagul, which gives me 25% reduced reflected damage anyways. So overall, that'll give me the 85% reduced reflected damage. So that should allow me, this build, to be able to run reflect maps and not have to worry at all, even though I have super high damage. So that's how I decided to scale out this build, and this is my entire remodel. I didn't break down the trees as far as scaling and everything involved with this tree, but this is how I plan on doing it. I even gave myself some extra jewel sockets as far as everything is involved with that. So this build ended up working out very, very comfortably as far as everything that I needed to do. So this is the end. Yeah, this is pretty much everything that I wanted to do. Everything covered, involved with everything that I needed for this build. So this is my 2 builds that I've remodeled. I hope you guys, again, I hope you guys get to check out any of the builds I've done, or anything like that, and anything that you guys have seen me do. And then I hope you guys, if you guys like them, you guys check out some of my builds and give me a shout out for them if you've ever run them or anything like that. So this is, again, these are my 2 remodels, and these are typically going to be my league starters from probably here on out, unless I come up with some other builds, which is highly possible because I am always crafting builds, as you guys have seen. So, but I wanted to make sure that I got out for you guys all the remodels that I've done and everything involved with it, so you guys can see how I planned out my builds and everything like that. If you guys want me to, I will link the paste bin of my builds. I have no problem with that. I will paste in them into the description below if you guys need them. If not, it's fine. You guys can see here, as you guys can see, everything with the tree is involved. So that's all I wanted to talk about, and that's all I need to discuss as far as the remodeling of my builds. So that's all I wanted to cover. So I'm gonna head out. Nuie out.
Heaven sent my residence, it's heaven, just visit